Welcome to The Jump, presented by Best Buy.
Today's opening tip. Richard, you have become a pickleball player here in the bubble.
I'm terrible at it.
I mean, you're terrible at a lot of things that aren't basketball, but how competitive are these games? Because you're out there, today you were out there with Scott Foster, and you guys have had some words on the
Well, look, I play in the rain. I'll play in anything. Look, when you got a week in the hole and you only get to walk back and forth to testing, and the only physical activity quarantine is the hole. When you only physical activity you get to see is people playing pickleball, you're like, it's either that or the gym. I'll see you guys on the court. Who wants some? I'm ready. I'm ready.
Oh, boy. By the way, Richard's quarantine came with Xbox, right?
Xbox, Oculus,
TV.
all the stuff. And
Yeah,
I know for a fact I would not last a day in prison.
It was really rough. Welcome to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols, and on that note, I am joined by 2016 NBA champ Richard Jefferson and our NBA insider, senior writer Ramona Shelburne. Great to have you both on with us today. Coming up, we're going to talk about the Eastern Conference Finals. They don't resume until Wednesday, so who does the long layoff benefit more, the Heat or the Celtics? We will discuss. First, though, let's get to last night. For years, Anthony Davis was a very big boy who didn't get a chance to play at the big boy level. All that talent and size and touch and work ethic. For nearly a decade in the league, all it had added up to was the P word, potential. Maybe he could be one of the true greats of his generation, but honestly, how would we know for sure when we never got to see him past the second round of the playoffs? Well, we learned a little bit more last night when the Lakers got themselves into quite the situation, down one in a game they had largely led with just 2.1 on the clock, and Denver looking like it was about to assert itself in these Western Conference Finals. For LA, there would only be one chance, one shot. So Rajon Rondo asked Frank Vogel if he could be the one to do the inbounds. And as Rondo stood there on the sideline, a human computer just analyzing every matchup currently on the floor, his eyes fell on AD. The two had played together in New Orleans, so Rajon knew just not how dangerous AD could be, but just how many years Davis had yearned to show it. And boy, did he once the ball got in his hands. On the move, and wow, money. Now, for a few hours after the game, there was a lively internet debate on exactly what Mason Plumlee was doing on this play, calling for the switch when no one was screening him. But honestly, fixating on that is missing the point. Anthony Davis is a 6'10 center who, when given the chance to make the game winner 26 feet from the basket under absurd pressure, hit an absolutely beautiful, clean three. Afterward, Rondo called it the biggest shot of AD's life so far, and then added this.
Watching him grow, obviously I played with him a couple years back, and to where he's come now, he's always been a dominant force for any opponent he's ever played against, but see him grow and hit a shot in this type of environment, Western Conference Final doesn't really get any bigger than this.
It sure is big to hit this kind of shot. And watch how he celebrated. Poor Talen Horton-Tucker, by the way. Hey, Rook, what can I tell you? Sometimes victory has a price.
Such a little butt down.
Woo, the whole team celebration was crazy. But AD and LeBron James in particular had such a special exchange. You know, it was LeBron who AD had gone to back in March after he missed a near identical shot in a game against Brooklyn. That had actually turned out to be the Lakers' final game before the NBA shut down, and Davis became consumed by being that. That was how he had left things.
I mean, Brian, I tell you, the first, like 4 days, I was talking to him like, damn, I should have made that shot for you. Like, I got to make that shot for you. And he was like, man, you're fine. And then I knew that I was going to have an opportunity, tonight to make, almost that same exact shot from the same exact spot. It's for sure the biggest shot of my career, and I just want to be able to compete for a championship. And I know that, moments like this comes with it.
Right after AD did hit that shot last night, as he was running back to the bench, he yelled, Kobe, just like so many kids do after they hit an imaginary big game winner in their driveways. Of course, for Davis and the Lakers, that comes with so much more weight now. They have dedicated this postseason to Kobe's memory. And last night, we're even wearing their Kobe tribute black snakeskin-themed jerseys. Kobe, of course, wrote himself indelibly into the history books of the sport by coming up big in those big boy moments. Now, finally, Anthony Davis has the chance to try following in his footsteps. And so far, he is making the most of it. Richard, what did you see as the significance of that shot?
Well, I was always told and taught very young, there are players that don't want those shots. Mm-hmm. There are players that want those shots, and there are players that can make those shots. Though there are three different types of players. And so you watch Anthony Davis, and I remember I was at that game. I was doing the Brooklyn Laker game, and even Kevin Durant's face was just like, oh, he's going to make this. So to get that exact same shot in the exact same spot at a much higher level shows you that he's mentally starting to figure it out. He doesn't let past failures, mess with him. He's like, I'm going to have another opportunity, and when I get that second opportunity, I'm going to knock it down. So I don't want to say without that failure in the Nets game, would he have been successful here? No, but his thought process starts to change of like, yo, I'm going to be in these moments. Start to slow your heart rate down. Start to slow your breathing down. Start to zero in. Start to focus. And so I think in that moment, we started to see the growth of Anthony Davis.
Look, it's all about muscle memory, right? You make that shot once and you have that memory in your muscles and in your brain and in your heart that you can do it again. And I think even I know we don't want to dissect what happened on the defensive end of that, where Mason Plumlee runs into LeBron and Jeremy Grant is looking at it like, should I switch? Should I not? But it's so metaphoric for exactly what just happened for the Lakers and for Anthony Davis and LeBron James and their relationship. LeBron James didn't do anything. He's just standing there. He didn't set a pick. He didn't make a move to make a shot. But he's so important to what the Lakers do, and they're so focused on LeBron James. They forgot Anthony Davis is out there about to hit the game-winning shot. And I think that's a reminder, and it was a huge confidence boost to Anthony Davis. Like LeBron might be the point guard. He might have finished second in the MVP voting, but you are the future of this team, and they're not going to win by just LeBron carrying them there. LeBron has to teach Anthony Davis how to win, and I think that was a big lesson last night. And now he feels that. Now he knows that next time that shot comes up.
Yeah, and look, Ramona mentioned it, the defensive breakdown. Richard, I know you've been itching to talk about this. Please discuss what happened defensively for the Nuggets there.
Well, look, everybody's talking about Mason Plumlee, but when coaches draw up plays, they draw them up a lot of times to cause confusion. And so when you watch Mason Plumlee in that spot, you see him pointing to Grant very, very early. Because if Mason Plumlee tries to go underneath the screen, he's got to sprint to underneath Brown. Jeremy Grant could get the steal. If you look at this, if Jeremy Grant, and what they say to basketball all the time, if there is no screen, then there is no defensive scheme. So no screen, no scheme. So if Jeremy Grant would have ran out at that moment, he would have had a steal. But you see these guys communicating. He's like, we're going to switch everything. But he can't switch at the level or else Bron gets to drive down for a layup and a back cut. That's why Rondo wants it. So he's got to go underneath. And look, at the end of the day, he hit this over a 6'11" person, and it was contested with a coach right behind you in front of the Nuggets bench. So I don't want to hear any of this, what was Mason Plumlee doing? Mason Plumlee ideally was doing what he is supposed to do in that moment. That means go underneath. Now, the other part about it is if he doesn't switch, then all of a sudden you have Bron. That's why coaches draw up those plays to cause confusion, and it was a great one.
Ramona, I was talking before about just Anthony Davis wanting these moments so badly. He said this was the biggest shot of his life. Where do you think it ranks for you in terms of what you've seen him do?
I think for him, because of the stage, because he wanted to be there. And let's go back to them wearing their Kobe jerseys. I'm always thinking about Kobe talking about, who was going to be the next standard bearer of this franchise, right? They would always go pursue free agents, whether it was Dwight Howard or Carmelo Anthony, and they wouldn't get them. And Kobe's response was always the same, is we shouldn't have to recruit you to the Lakers. The guy who's going to be at the face of the Lakers is going to want to be here. I shouldn't have to even pitch you. I shouldn't have to explain it to you. You have to want to be here, and you have to want to be in those moments. LeBron James wanted that moment. Anthony Davis wanted that moment. They wanted to be there. And Kobe's right. Like the person who takes on the face of the franchise for the Lakers, he's got to want to be that and everything that comes with it.
Absolutely. All right, coming up, we're going to switch to the other side of the bracket. The Celtics taking Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals on Saturday. What was the difference for them? We will discuss that. First, though, the latest edition of Jump at the Symphony.
It's a make or miss league.
All that, and he knows about wine, too. Make Billy Oil, Alex Caruso getting the lead pass.
Look at that pass.
Exit pass, Jeremy Grant. Ramona, which is the better nickname for him, the Caruso or the bald eagle?
I mean, I gotta go with Caruso.
Thank
That's
you.
so fun to say. Yeah, it's so good.
Billy Hoyle. That is the best nickname. We opened it up with Billy Hoyle. Do you understand that is like one of the most awesome basketball names in the culture? Stay with Billy Hoyle.
And you're going to have a lot more chances to debate this over the coming weeks,
Yes.
is my theory. All right, miss layups. LeBron meeting Jamal Murray at the rim. Watch this. Whew.
Ooh.
Then LeBron gets in transition. Torrey Craig, he gets the LeBron, the chase down.
There we go. Everybody hustling out there. Everybody working. But look, that's like a big dude picking on a little dude. The other one, Jeremy Grant, is on the same athleticism plane as Bron,
Right.
so that's a little bit more fair. Bron out here picking on young Canadian kids. That's not cool, man. It's not cool.
Canadians are people too, Richard. They have just as much a right to grow up and be basketball players as you did.
You're welcome.
Make bags. Speaking of Jamal Murray, he was in his several nice finishes last night. Is this layup now, not the ball handling, is the layup package Kyrie-esque, or would you not even go that far?
I would go that far because that 360 filet layup he made the round before, maybe it was in the Utah series, that is up there. Now, again, Kyrie does it 5 times a night.
Right.
But yes, that
And
is
18 other things in
and
between.
18 other things, but that's the evolution of basketball.
Yeah.
These younger players see this stuff and they start to emulate it. But look at that. Look at all in one hand, bring it around. Whew. Never had that. Never had that.
You can wear it in pickleball. You can get it.
Yeah, no, I don't have
Pickleball.
any skill set there either, to tell you the truth.
I know that looks good at home, Ramona. Woo. All right, Miss Intensity. Speaking of layups, here is a bunch of missed ones and lots of sloppy basketball, so we had to give it the yakety sax treatment. Ramona, what is going on here?
Well, look, I just think you have a lot of sloppy basketball, but
We put it in black and white so it wouldn't be
Oh,
your eyes would not have
my
to see
eyes. We've all been
as
there.
much.
Oh, is there more? We're gonna get another one? Oh, jeez.
It wasn't good.
Hey.
There. All right, make transition. Celtics were up 4 with 2.5 minutes left in the half, and they turned the energy way up. Good defense and transition buckets, finishing the half up 13. Richard, why is that so important to close quarters like that, especially in the playoffs?
Well, because a lot of times you either do all of your work and early, and then you're not able to finish it off, or you've been battling, and then that last 2 minutes you get into a stretch, and then you're able to get some rest during that timeout, so you can actually continue that stretch.
Yep. Closing quarters, closing quarters, closing quarters. Say it all the time. All right, guys, let's stick with the Eastern Conference Finals. The Celtics getting themselves back into the series against the Heat with a victory on Saturday. Boston said its response is proof that there is more than enough resolve within this team to turn the entire series around and win it. So, Richard, what do you think was the difference in Game 3?
I'm going to say this. It was Gordon Hayward, right? Just having him on the court. Now, he didn't have this amazing game. It wasn't over the top. But having a guy that grew up in the Brad Stevens system, you don't call a lot of isolation plays. So he will get the ball, he will cut, he will move. He's also 6'8", so he makes defensive plays. He can rebound in traffic. There's a lot of things that he can do. But Gordon Hayward is such an unselfish player. And then I don't want to say that he is the focal point, but he averaged 17 points a game. That's nothing to scoff about. Everyone's talking about what the Lakers are missing with Avery Bradley. Well, this man averaged even more. And they don't have two studs like LeBron and AD. So having Gordon Hayward on the court I felt like opened things up for them and gave them a jolt of energy.
Well, I think what Gordon does, too, is he plays really good fundamental basketball where when you just need to break that Miami zone, he knows what to do. Like, he was a great cutter to the middle of the zone when they need to do that. In Game 2, when he wasn't out there, I thought they didn't really cut in there. They would sort of drift and didn't look like they were exact. When you go back in high school and how do you break a zone? Gordon Hayward was just executing that perfectly, and I think that really helped them out. But the other thing, too, is Marcus Smart on Goran Dragic in a lot of those moments really got the Heat out of what I think they like to do. And part of that was early on they got Duncan Robinson in foul trouble. Marcus Smart had been on him a little bit, and so by getting him out of the game, you're able to put Marcus on Dragic. I mean, they just did a lot of things well in Game 3 that I think if they can continue doing that, we have ourselves a series.
No, Ramona, you make a great point. Like, he's been, when we talk about he played for Brad Stevens, he knows Brad Stevens' zone offense because he ran it in college. And then that was part of the reason why he signed with Boston, is because of familiarity with Brad Stevens. And that's one of the things that's so amazing with this group. He averaged 17 points a game. I'm going to keep saying that because if there was any team in the playoff right now that got a 17-point-a-game scorer, they would be ecstatic. It would shift things in the series as long as they're able to integrate him the right way. And I think they did a good job of doing that in Game 2.
Brad Stevens told me that Gordon is just the stabilizer, that just he has so much assurance, that veteran experience of what to do when, and you saw it in that game. All right, let's talk about the other side, though, because after the Heat lost that game, Jimmy Butler said, quote, "I think it gets old playing from behind consistently, especially against a great team like Boston and what they bring to the table." So, Ramona, this is a real pivotal moment for them. Either the Heat can go up 3-1 and sort of keep their grip on this series, or we could be all at 2-2 in just a couple of days. How do they avoid that?
Well, they keep Eric Spoelstra keeps talking about the Celtics are doing a great job of flattening us out on offense, right? And so I think what he means by that is when their defense just collapses, right? When they want to drive, they collapse. One thing that's been very effective for Miami is when they can get Bam Adebayo going downhill, right? When you're not just relying on Goran to create everything, do his Manu Ginobili imitation out there, and you can get Jimmy going downhill. That really opens things up because, the Miami Heat obviously is a great three-point shooting team, but when you have a night where your best sniper, you're starting, Duncan Robinson is a starter out there, gets into early foul trouble, that changes the dynamics out there a little bit. So I think if they can just get Bam going downhill, Jimmy going downhill a little bit, where the Celtics aren't able to flatten them out, they can be on par offensively in places they want to be.
Yeah, no, Ramona, it's great. It's great to have that resolve. It's great to have that resiliency. Like 100%, you want to have that team that's not just front runners. That means that when they get down, they're able to fight back. And they've been winning some of these games decisively. It wasn't like they just winning by one. It's like they've been down 10 and won by 10. But ultimately, that does exert a lot of energy. Now, that energy, it doesn't come back to haunt you because you're not having to travel. You're not having to go on the home court or somebody else's home court. There's a lot of constants here that I think that's part of the reason why we've seen so many great comebacks. But Jimmy Butler's right. You don't want to keep getting down because every time you move forward, every game, these things matter more, and you start to lose that margin of error. The same thing happened with the Nuggets coming back from double digits. And all of a sudden you had one game, one shot to win. But it was like if you would have played consistent basketball in the first 3 quarters, maybe it wouldn't have led to that. And I think that's what kind of Jimmy Butler is talking about, those first portions of the game where they need to be playing better basketball, not just the last 10 minutes.
And if you have this list that we're looking at right now, you cannot help it. Mentally, you use it a little bit as a crutch, right? You start to think oh, we're down, but we'll come back. Don't worry about it. We can depend on that. This is how we do, all of that stuff. Unfortunately, it is very hard to come back from a double-digit deficit against an excellent Final Four team, and that's what the Heat are doing. You mentioned it earlier in the segment also, Ramona, about foul trouble. I do think that is going to be another key for them to not get into this situation. Again, Duncan Robinson specifically, as you noted, Tyler Hero, these guys have to be out on the court in that key stretch in the 3rd and 4th quarter. All right, guys, here's what The Jump recommends for today. Baxter Holmes has a piece up on the ESPN app about Jaylen Brown being a player for this moment. Baxter discusses Jaylen's educational background and all the steps along the way that prepared him to be a leader for this career.
The winner wasn't deserving of the MVP, but that pissed me off. And I finished second a lot in my career. Either from a championship and now 4 times as the MVP. It's a weird thing sometimes that I don't know how much we are really watching the game of basketball, or are we just in the narration mode, the narrative. I mean, I'm fine. Don't get it twisted. I'm going back to my room. I'm perfectly fine. I was pissed off at the reaction earlier when I saw it. I'm absolutely great now. I'm going back to my room, drink some wine, and sleep very well tonight. So let's not get it twisted. I'm great.
Don't get it twisted. He's got the wine. Welcome back to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols, still here with Ramona Shelburne, Richard Jefferson. Those were LeBron's remarks after finding out he was runner-up to Giannis for MVP this season. It was the 4th time in his 17-career career he has finished up as runner-up, tied with Jerry West and Larry Bird for most all time. So, Ramona, you voted for LeBron James. Does he have a point about awards voting?
Yeah, he does. And look, I'm one of the 16, okay? And last time we talked about this, I made the mistake that my friend Tony Reale on Around the Horn always mutes me for, right? He docks me points on Around the Horn when I use the word narrative, okay? And I think LeBron's using the word narrative wrong.
I was going to say, he's the narrative, right? Isn't he the narrative in this situation?
He's the narrative, right? He's the narrative. He's the one with the story. Giannis is actually not the narrative. Giannis is the statistical winner. By every statistical measure, Giannis should have won. Giannis was the best player, the most valuable, all of that. If you want to get into that, I look at the totality of LeBron's contributions this year. I gave him points for leadership. I give him credit for taking a team that had been out of the playoffs for 6 years to the #1 seed in the Western Conference, for integrating with Anthony Davis. Those seem to be big. That takes a lot, and that's why I voted for LeBron. He led the league in assists at age 35, played a new position at point guard. Giannis, to me, had a spectacular season. I voted for him last year. This is not personal, but let's talk a little bit about the broader scheme of awards voting.
Oh, yes.
There are a lot of awards voters. Yeah, okay? There are a lot of voters. There are over 100 people who vote for MVP. And I knew when I voted for LeBron that I was going to be in the majority this year. Sorry, in the minority this year. Of course, everybody had written their columns. It was talked about openly. You knew that if you were going to vote for LeBron, you were going to be in the minority. And so you knew you would have to defend your vote. I think there is some pressure not to there is some pressure to just kind of go along with what everybody else is going to vote for. So he does have a point there. I agree with him on that there is some pressure to just vote for whoever. You read Zach Lowe's column, or you read John Hollinger's column, or you read whoever's column that you read, and maybe you read 10 of them. You study your own numbers, whatever you do to do your voting. But that's why there are 100-something voters, okay? 101 voters, right? The NBA does this on purpose. There's radio broadcasters, there's analysts, there's former players, there's beat writers, there's columnists, because we all have differences of opinion, and collectively you will come out with who should win the award. Now, I do think he has a point that there is pressure to go along with the herd. I do think that he has a valid point there.
Now, look, I understand everything that everybody is saying. And I feel bad because it's kind of like when you have those MJ versus LeBron conversations, because it's like, well, by saying one is better, it's like you're trying to demean the other. We're not trying to say that Giannis didn't have an amazing season. That's not the conversation. We're not trying to say, and most people would say, look, Giannis would be second at worst. But ultimately, Giannis might not care about these things now. But when Giannis is 31 years old and he's having seasons that are just as good as the one he's having, but because there's somebody newer and younger and shinier coming along, and that person had a historic season, now all of a sudden his accomplishments at a much later age, and that should have, in my opinion, that should be accounted for. When you're doing things at an age that have never been done, when you're doing things in your career that have never been done. That was one thing that somebody pointed out to me that had never taken place. LeBron James literally led the NBA in assists for the first time in his career, and he's at 17 years. Why? Because his team needed him to do that, right? And that was something that was magnificent. When you look at Giannis, he was great, but all he did was just consistently improve on what he did last year. He not necessarily added something to his game. His free throw percentage didn't go up. His three-pointer was not effective, especially we saw that late game. So I understand why everyone's frustrated. I understand why Bron is frustrated. I understand why Giannis fans are like, what are you talking about? It's just weird the way we're going about this, and there needs to be an adjustment in it, because Giannis had a great statistical season, but I don't know if he was the best player in basketball last year.
He was, that is, of course, what poor Ramona has now heard me say for 5 straight years. That is the question, right? Yeah. That is the point. That is the inflection point we're at. And frankly, it is even more of an issue now than it was when I started talking about this 5 years ago, because with every year, the statistical pressure of all of that has gotten so great because we have more statistics. We have more access to games, actually. When I started covering the NBA, you got a game of the week on national television, and that was kind of it. And people saw Michael Jordan a million times and all of that. Now we have access to all the tape of every single game, every stat imaginable. And you're talking about, Richard, LeBron's context of hey, he did this in this season, or Giannis didn't add this to last season. Again, right now, that is not what they tell you to vote on. And they don't give you the most clear instructions, but they do say it's supposed to be on this particular regular season. Not in comparison to his previous seasons, not about what he might do in the playoffs, not about who is the best player. It is about what a guy did with the stats for this season. And I have said over and over again, I think it is a mistake, as we have gone through the last 3.5 decades without modernizing the major awards in this league, to not have a distinction between who had the most outstanding statistical season, however you want to put it, best season, most outstanding season this season, versus who's the best player in the NBA. And I think that is a lot of what LeBron James was frustrated with, right? It was like, y'all know I'm the best player in the NBA still. But that's not what the award is for right now. It drives me
I'll go back to
crazy.
This. Shaquille O'Neal was the most dominant man on the planet for like 10 to 12 seasons.
Yeah.
Most dominant man. It wasn't even close. And I believe he has 2 MVPs. And I feel like that part is something that, again, who is the best player in the league versus who is having the best statistical seasons.
Well, and here's, by the way, Kobe and LeBron were the flip-flop of this back in, I think, 2009. Ramona, you're going to be no chapter and verse on this, that Kobe was considered the best player in the NBA in 2009. Mm-hmm. LeBron won the award because he had the best stats that season. So he has been the beneficiary of this conundrum, and now it is working against him. And I would just, again, urge the NBA to consider modernizing the awards so that we can make a distinction between who had the best season versus, hey, who do we think is the best player in the NBA this year? And by the way, that can change from year to year, because if we had those 2 awards, I would have given best player in the NBA this year, last season, to Kevin Durant, right? He had a more of like, man, he's the best player in the league this season last year. This year, I would give that to LeBron James, hands down. But the best statistical season went to Giannis. I just, again, think that there can be a differentiation. All right. Before we go to break, I do want to address something from this past weekend. So I talk sometimes about the women of the NBA, and often someone will try to correct me and say, you mean the WNBA? And I'll say, no, I mean the NBA. Yes, what you see on your TV when you watch the NBA is men playing basketball. But in every corner of the sport, there are women, all through the league office, team front offices, training staffs, coaching staffs. And none of them, me included, would be able to do the jobs we do the way we do them if it wasn't for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Honestly, if you are an American woman who appreciates not having to ask your father or husband for permission to manage your own finances, property, health, you owe a gigantic debt to the notorious RBG. Something the WNBA recognized with a lovely video tribute before its playoff game last night. So it was surprising then, and disappointing, frankly, when the NBA chose not to do the same. Despite that it was just last month the league held such meaningful moments of silence for not just politician and civil rights icon John Lewis, but actor Chadwick Boseman. If you are a league that holds equality as a core value, and I know for sure that this league does, the icons of that equality can't just be those who helped the men that we all see on TV, but those who paved the way for the women who work right alongside them. After all, the NBA is significantly stronger because of all the women who work in and around it. And we are all significantly stronger because a young lawyer dedicated her life to allowing us to have those opportunities. So thank you, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I don't know how much basketball you watched, but I know you had a hand in making our game better and lost right.
Mainly from the standpoint of they're building confidence, right? They got to build confidence, and they know that they can come back against the Clippers. They proved that they could come back this whole postseason. So here they were down 16. They had the lead. They had a 1-point lead with 2 seconds to go. Lakers had no timeouts, and Anthony Davis hit a historic shot. So if you're the Denver Nuggets, it's like, hey, we're down 2-0. We've been here before, but we're gaining confidence and we're playing better.
Ramona, what do you think?
Look, I think after game one, they walked out of there saying, all our stars got in foul trouble. They never really got going. The big shot, Jokic having 2 assists in game one, that you can write that game off. Game two, the Nuggets were right there, and I know they were down at the end there, but they really started getting Jokic going. And when Jokic gets going, he starts dishing out assists. Jamal Murray gets going. I mean, they found something there in game two, especially towards the end of game two, that I think they take with them throughout the series. And plus, look, they've been down 3-1 before several times. Like, this is nothing new for them.
They have, but I would say this couple of things. And I agree with you, by the way, both of you guys, that they did find some silver lining here. But a few things. We thought the Clippers were going to be this crazy hard second-round opponent for them. They were not, right? The Clippers didn't lose that series by putting up some incredible, great effort, and it was best against best, and the Nuggets beat them. The Clippers did not play the way anyone, including themselves, expected them to, and the Nuggets were able to come in. So they have not, and playing the Utah Jazz, too, in the first round, they have not faced a team that is running on all cylinders like the Lakers. So I just think, kind of like the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler we're talking about, you cannot count on, hey, we'll come back from a 3-1 deficit. Hey, we'll come back from double-digit leads. This is a team playing at a different level than anyone they have faced in the previous 2 rounds. And I would also just say, and I know, Richard, you want to jump in here, but I would say you got to stop talking about the fouls. You just got to. You got to stop talking about the officiating. It's not going to help.
It's not. I don't think that was officiating. It was just merely a fact that they got into foul trouble and they didn't get those minutes. The only thing I would say this.
Yes.
When we talk about the Clippers hitting on all cylinders, they were up 3-1. That's a lot of cylinders. Maybe not all, but that's most of your cylinders.
Are you really going to tell me that last round, Nuggets-Clippers, was great team against great team, executing both at their highest level, and just the Nuggets were the ones who won? Because that's not what I saw.
Oh, God, no, I would not say that.
That is just not what I saw.
I was standing right there during the fourth quarter, and that is not what I saw in Game 7.
Yes, so my point is they are playing against a team now that is executing on all cylinders. And I just don't think you can count on, don't worry, we can get in a 3-1 hole and we'll be fine. That's not going to happen against a team that's playing. Richard picked the Nuggets in 7. Okay, up next, we will discuss which Eastern Conference finalists will benefit more from the 3-day layoff that we're in the middle of between games 3 and 4. Stick around to find out. You are watching